Have you ever met someone that you think is interesting and wish you could sit down and have a longer conversation with? Well, we believe what starts here at LSU changes the world and builds the future, and we invite you to listen in on this stage of its construction. Join us on Campus Connections with Colin Raby as we find and learn from student leaders, builders, thinkers, and change makers.
Welcome to part 2 of our discussion with Andrew Larpenter. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself again?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Andrew Larpenter. I am a graduating senior in mechanical engineering, and I was on this show previously talking about spy balloons and all other manner of interesting topics, and now I'm back again.
Absolutely. So Andrew has an interesting array of different involvements and things, so we thought there was a lot left to talk about. So first of all, you're kind of ubiquitously known as someone that has a pretty high GPA. And so there's I kind of want to talk about a little bit just the idea of, obviously, once you get into the workforce, right, the weight of a GPA kind of drops. What do you think is the value of a GPA? And just kind of generally your thoughts on attaining a high one, but also how much emphasis should be put on that?
Yeah, I would say that the GPA is definitely, beyond a certain point, there's not much reason to have it higher and higher, honestly, above 3.5, you qualify for like every engineering company. Like that is the most restrictive limit that some of them have is 3.5. For other ones, like you just got to be above 3. Sometimes it's like 2.5 at some companies, but really beyond a certain point, you get diminishing returns on how high your GPA is. For me personally, it's always just been something that I've taken personal pride in, and I guess probably ego too. Like it's just, I've always done well at school and like high school, and I try to do well in college too, and that's just the reflection of that. Like it's not, after a certain point, like the motivation for it is really personal. You don't see much of a benefit from it in terms of trying to secure a job. And GPA only really matters for the first job too. Like once you have work experience in the industry, that's what companies care about more when you're jumping companies.
So you've almost gamified it, right? You just want to do the best to do the best.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I've always kind of treated school. It's just me trying to do the best I can do, because I feel like, God's given me this gift of doing well in school, and I'm just trying to like use that gift to its fullest extent.
And so what are, if there is freshmen or even just not freshmen, just anyone listening to this podcast that might be struggling, whether it's in engineering or in anything else, what is some advice that you would give them if they want to move from getting C's to B's to A's type of thing?
Well, I would say that there's definitely like the 80-20 rule on, 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. And at a certain point, there's really diminishing returns where you'll see bigger personal gains from investing your time elsewhere. So like if you reached like the most that you could possibly study for a test, and you're not going to do much better from another 6 hours of studying, then you should spend that time in other personal growth areas, right? Like you can spend it doing engineering outreach, you can spend it learning another language. Like at a certain point, there's a limit to how much studying can help you in any scenario. And I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in that rut of like, I'm going to have to spend 12 hours studying for this test. But if like 8 hours gets you most of the way there, like that extra time you're kind of wasting, and you might get burned out and do even worse on the test, Right. There's just diminishing returns on that sort of thing. Especially
if you're going on a 12-hour bender of studying, like how much of that time are you actually spending studying? And two, like past 6-8 hours, I mean, you're just going to lose your ability to concentrate on something.
Yeah, and GPA is not everything. Like it's an important part of it, but you really, especially engineering companies and the bigger ones when they're recruiting, they want you to be a holistic individual, right? They want you to show leadership experience and skills. They want you to show involvement in the community. And the GPA has really been kind of de-emphasized beyond a certain point. So, it's kind of hard to tell someone, you should be doing everything you can for this number, when at the end of the day, the number just needs to be like good enough, really. And it's more important both as an engineer and for your job prospects to kind of spread out your efforts across your entire persona, And that's really what I would say to a lot of the incoming freshmen, is that you want to spend this time when you're in college at this, big university, 30,000 kids. There's a lot of stuff happening here. There's a lot of clubs. There's a lot of organizations. There's a lot of, there's a lot of opportunities. And really your 4 years here should be spent trying to seize as many of those opportunities as possible, trying new experiences, furthering your commitment to your degree and yourself and your own advancement. because once you graduate, you might not be able to learn about as many of those opportunities, or maybe a lot of those opportunities are for students only, you know?
Right.
Same thing as like when you were in high school, you didn't know about all these opportunities at the college, and now you're here, take advantage of them, sign up for all the stuff, and try to, you know, holistically invest in yourself as much as possible. And that's really where you get most of the value from your college degree.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had a hypothesis that the main interest that companies would have in a GPA is that it's an indication of competence and conscientiousness, which if you're looking to employ someone, you want someone that's highly conscientious for most things. You know, maybe graphical design might be a little bit different, but for a lot of particularly engineering applications, you want someone that's conscientious and someone that is that's showing competence in multiple areas. Do you kind of agree with that analysis, or do you think that there's more that it shows as well?
I think there's less. I think it shows even less than that. I think a GPA only shows how well someone takes tests. And that's all these engineering interviews, that's all the reason they've progressed to like star-based questions, is they want to get a better idea of who you actually are.
Right.
Because your resume is just a list of things you did, and your GPA is just, hey, this person can take tests well. And they want to know, okay, can this person take tests well because they're dedicated and because they study and because they're committed to themselves? Or does this person just, you know, memorize stuff easily? Like, that's what they're trying to learn in the interview stage, right? So like a GPA just kind of gets you in the door, and there's really just like a certain level you want to kind of keep it around or above. But all it really shows is like this person can pass tests. And then at the interview stage is where they want to actually learn who you are and what kind of engineer you are.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I also think it's a good fail safe. Like, you know, if you have nothing else, but you have a really high GPA, people are going to take you seriously. But also, if you have a really low GPA, but maybe you've designed a part that was used for a NASA mission, well, you're probably also going to be taken seriously. You just need as many domains of displaying exceptional ability for them to take you seriously. And for a lot of students, the main thing that can display that is their GPA.
Yeah, I think engineering companies are kind of looking at like 5 or 6 main areas, and a student just needs to have like at least 3 of those to get on a company's radar, you know?
What would you say those
like
areas are?
I mean, I don't know if there's 6. I was just throwing a number out
Gotcha.
there.
Yeah,
I'll start counting in a second here to see what we get up to.
You're all good.
But I was going to say, like, I know multiple students who are incredibly smart people that just are really stressed out when they try to take a test or panic on a test, and then they struggle in classes, but know the material like better than I do. So like the GPA it's a flawed indicator of trying to look at something like competence, and the companies know that too. Like it's just they want it to be at like a certain minimum number. Different companies have different minimums. You know, some are 2.5, some are 3.5. Like it just depends on the company. But it's really just to get you in the door, and then they're going to try to figure out who you are. Because I think, you know, GPA is one of them. You want to have a good GPA. You want experience. You want, I'd say like outreach/volunteer work, like something that shows a commitment to a community. Did I say leadership already? I already lost track of what I counted. Leadership would be 4 then, which is the big ones they always talk about is like leadership and school experience/grades. They want to see you work well on teams. So not just leadership, but also working well under other people and how you interact in a team-based environment. So that's around 5 things that they really want to see come through either in your resume when you list like, you know, worked in a fast-paced team environment to accomplish, you know, all the resume fluff words, or just your GPA number written on there. Like they'll kind of get an idea from your resume, but in your interviews, that's really what they're trying to find out, because the star-based questions are all like, you know, describe a time you worked on a team to solve a difficult problem, or describe a time you were in a team and had conflict and how you resolved it. You know, like that's what they're trying to get out of you is how would you do the job of an engineer?
Yeah, and star being what situation, task. Action and then response?
Result.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, and sometimes you hear car-based where it's just circumstances, action, and response, because it's the whole situation and task are very, very similar, where it's like the situation was this and the task was the second half of that situation sentence I just told you, you know? So, but you don't, when you're in those interviews, like you don't really have to keep it rigid. Like they'll be like, respond using the star format, and they don't want you to be like, okay, well the situation was this and then the task was, you know, like you're trying to hit a word count. Yeah. Like I normally just tell the story of what happened, and in the process I'm hitting all the points, you know. And it's good to practice sort of responding to star-based questions. Some advice for upcoming engineers. Another thing to tell freshmen, it's like practice interviews, you know, with your friends, or join an engineering club that will hold mock interviews with you, because answering those star-based questions, it's useful. If you're preparing for an interview, I would always, like, through your college career, open like a notes document and keep track of all your like team-based activities you've done, so that before an interview you can look back over them, and so that you're not blanking during the interview. Like, okay, well, in sophomore design we did this project, and this is so, well, like the main problem we ran into was this. Like, write that stuff down in your notes app, because it's hard to remember that like 3 years later, but it's useful stuff to talk about in the interview. And then go to every single career fair, even the spring ones. Even if you already have an internship, go to the career fairs, because the practice is super, super valuable, just practicing selling yourself. And I would say especially if you already have an internship lined up, because then there's no stress of like, oh man, I really got to get this job. Like, you already have a job. Go talk to companies, practice selling yourself, and you'll get better at it. So by the time junior year or senior year, when you're like looking for a big internship or like a full-time job, you have the experience already, you're comfortable in these situations, and that really makes you stand out versus some of the other people.
Definitely. And that is an interesting thought that you mentioned. You know, when you go into it, you just try to tell the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what the STAR method does, or the CAR method does, is it forces you to take your experience and put it within the framework of a narrative, right? There's kind of a narrative arc to it of, we're going to describe the background.
Yeah, there's a real
whole
hero's
situation.
journey, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And then here's how we resolved it, and here was the result, and hey, happy ending. You know, there's a real narrative in that. And so it definitely is interesting whether you're describing yourself in an interview or whether you're structuring your life. It is interesting to see those kind of narratives. And you know, it plays into one other thing that I definitely wanted to talk about. So you've said that you're kind of one of your goals is to become like the CEO of Exxon, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you choose that as like your guiding star?
Well, that is the ultimate goal, right? There's no higher, in a company, there's no higher position than CEO, so why not aim for the top?
And why Exxon?
Same thing with like at LSU, where it's like, why do I have a high GPA? Because that's the highest possible goal is what you aim for, and then if you miss, you're still doing pretty good, right?
Right.
Same, they say
shoot for the moon, land in the stars.
Yeah. Aim for the moon. If you miss, you'll land amongst the stars or whatever. Yeah. Same principle, right? If your goal is the highest possible goal, then you'll push yourself to do pretty well. To me, the reason I would want to be CEO of a company like ExxonMobil, though, is that for the business reasons, it's a very exciting position, right? Because we're on the verge of the new energy revolution, right? All these companies are kind of in this adapting mode where there's changes coming and they're trying to be ready for it, right? And something I've always felt would be like a terrible tragedy of history would be to be in the midst of a revolution in the wrong industry, right? So like, I'm glad I was born when I was born and not in like the 80s and stuff during the personal computer revolution, because I know nothing about designing a computer, and that's where all the cool change and advancement was happening, right? Like being a mechanical engineer during the early 1900s when like steam engines being revolutionized, the cars being made, that'd be an exciting time to work for any of those companies, right? Because like you're on the forefront and change is happening and you're well positioned, right? I'd hate to be in like the plow design business at that time, like I would hate to be like outside looking in on a revolution.
In the horse maintenance business around the 1920s.
Or even just like completely unrelated, where it's like, oh yeah, my job was like, I designed windows, and it's like, I got to watch cars get developed. I got to watch airplanes be made in this other industry. I was just alive during the same time, but didn't get to participate. Like, I think that's kind of like a tragedy of history to be in a position like that. So I would love to be, we're on the precipice of this big revolution, this monumental cultural shift over the next like 50 years towards more renewable energies. And, people call them oil and gas companies, and they like to call themselves energy companies now. But
especially recently, yes.
Both of those are lies, though.
Really?
They're engineering companies. And their value comes from the thousands of engineers, typically like the brightest engineers, and like they have high GPA requirements, and they interview stringently, and they pay really well, and they end up getting some pretty good engineers at a lot of these, oil and gas / energy companies. And that is where their value is in their engineering. Like, they're big engineering firms, basically. And it's not that they're really good at refining petroleum or chemicals, right? It's that they're really good at doing it at scale, and that they're really good at efficiency and minimizing costs and driving equipment till it almost breaks and running it 50 years past. Like, they're big engineering companies. And engineering can answer any problem, right? So with this energy revolution, they have the resources of talent, and they have the resources of money, and because it is a shift in their industry, they've got the resources of motivation to tackle this problem with all their money and with all their engineering and do some really cool, exciting stuff. And to me, if you're the CEO of one of those companies, you're providing the guiding vision, and I think that is the best job in the country. right? You get to say, okay, look, if we're shifting towards renewable energies, we can do carbon capture and storage. We can set up, like ExxonMobil is doing the hub, in the Houston hub is what they're calling it, where they're doing this big carbon capture and storage thing for the entire like region around Houston where all those plants are densely gathered. And to me, that's like, to provide a vision like that and be like, this is what my company is going to do. We're going to go into this area and be the forward, like the facing front of that, where you get to sell this to people. You get to interact with the locals and convince people that, hey, this is the future. You get to interact with your company and sell the company too on the idea of like, this is the direction we're moving, is a very, very cool, fun and rewarding position to be in. And I would just love that, because it's my idol is Drew Brees, right?
Okay.
Drew Brees is my hero. Because Drew Brees picked New Orleans and came to Louisiana at a time when everyone else was leaving, right? Sean Payton tells a story about when he was trying to convince Drew Brees to sign with the Saints, right after Sean Payton himself agreed to be head coach. And he was driving him through New Orleans, and he was showing him all the like recovered areas and was like, look, the city's alive, it's rebuilding, everyone's doing good. And he took a wrong turn and ended up in sort of a backwoods neighborhood with houses still gutted, with tarps still on roofs. And Sean Payton tells that story, and he says that he like at that moment, he was thinking, man, I might as well drive him straight to Miami right now because I just lost him. But Drew Brees and his wife Brittany are in the back seat, and when he tells the story, he says that was the moment. They looked at each other, and they both knew that they had to go to New Orleans, because they both needed New Orleans as badly as New Orleans needed someone like them, someone to come in and provide hope. And he's done so much in donations and charity work, and just Drew Brees embodies what it means to be a saint, right? It's amazing. And I would love to give back to Louisiana that way. And when you're in a position at a company like that, like you can make huge donations to local high schools and stuff. You can sponsor conservation efforts. You can work on wetlands rebuilding, and you can shift your company in a renewable way towards the future and towards the energy revolution. And really do good in the position of power that you have, because it is a very powerful position, right? When Rex Tillerson was CEO of Exxon, he was one of the most powerful people in the country, right? And to be in a position like that and have the opportunity to do good for the communities around you and for the states around you and the people, like to me is like, there's no greater goal than to want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's why I want to be CEO of Exxon. And then there's other reasons too that I'm just forgetting at the moment, but to me, those are like the two main ones. So it's very, very exciting place to be on the precipice of a revolution, to get to do some actual like effective change. And also as just the opportunity it provides to be able to give back.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. Some of the most effective and best forms of leadership are not leadership for the sake of the leadership, but leadership for the sake of a vision, of coalescing a lot of people around a shared vision and moving in that direction. And I mean
sometimes
you put that very, very eloquently.
Sometimes it's just a figurehead. My dad met the CEO of Dow once when my dad worked at Dow.
Okay.
He was doing like a tour of the site, doing photo ops and stuff. And they were like in between pictures, and they were trying to decide on how to frame it. And my dad's standing next to the CEO of Dow, and they're like, "Oh, sir, you need you to come over here and do this thing." And the CEO of Dow leans over to my dad and says, "Man, I love my job. I go where they tell me to go, and I say what they tell me to say." So like sometimes it is just being a figurehead, and I feel like that's a little less rewarding. But like I feel like there's real opportunity in those positions.
Right. If you're not complacent, there's the real opportunity. Well, and that actually gets into an interesting thing that I've said about like state senators or like the president. People think, oh, senators and the president, they have the most power in the world. Really, like they're the most constrained, because they have anyone that donates to their campaigns, anyone that allows them to be in the position they're in, they're beholden to those groups.
Until their last election.
Until they don't have to worry about it. But even sometimes on their last election, if they're trying to get the cushy, job at the company, or if they're trying to parlay into their next government job, sometimes you still have to be beholden to them. But sometimes you don't have to be. And it's interesting the way you just described the CEOs there's that same kind of dynamic where it sounds like there's probably a small percentage of CEOs that are really vision oriented and making a positive impact on the communities, but then there's probably a whole bunch of others that they know who got them there, and so they're going to be listening to them of what to say, what to do, everything like that.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, you are beholden to like the board of directors, right?
Right.
And so the whole thing is you have to do. That's why it's so exciting where we're at right now, is that finally the revolution's coming, is because there's finally some government incentive to a lot of these initiatives. Because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing has to be profitable for you to be able to sell it to like a board of directors and to shareholders, right? And that's always kind of the problem that's come up before on a lot of these renewable initiatives, is that they are very expensive. So we're finally starting to see like taxes on like carbon dioxide and stuff like that are or like tax credits and stuff on carbon dioxide that are finally getting to like the point where it's like, okay, it's starting to become profitable to invest billions and billions of dollars into this industry that desperately needs the innovation,
Right.
but that it's hard to do when it's so unprofitable.
Well, it's also now socially rewarding. I mean, I know part of the reason why you're starting to see a huge explosion in the use of solar utilities. So that's where you'll look at a field and it's just a whole bunch of solar panels. One of the reasons you're seeing an explosion of solar utilities within Louisiana is all of a sudden these companies have massive shareholders that want part of their company to either A, produce green renewable energy, or B, companies that aren't even energy manufacturers, a McDonald's per se. Well, they want to be able to go to the shareholders and say, hey, a percentage of our energy is coming from renewable energies. So if they can have on their grid utility scale solar, even if it's 0.5%, even if it's 1%, they can still go to the shareholders and say, hey, we're using renewable energy. And so there's that social incentive where now that's the good thing to do. That's the moral thing to do. And you reach a threshold where, okay, cool. Now that's the thing that all the shareholders are going to be pressing for and that makes your stock go higher and all of that. And we're definitely at that. That said, you mentioned a couple forms of sustainable energy.
I want to address your point before we move forward, though. I don't place much stock in that sort of like social credit you get from sustainability initiatives.
Okay.
I wish people cared about it more. But the problem is people like to say that they care about that sort of thing, but at the end of the day, they're gonna buy whatever's cheapest, right?
Right.
So like even if this company is a little more expensive but is a lot more renewable, it doesn't matter. The majority of the people are going to just buy whatever's cheapest, right? Like gasoline. Like most people, if they don't have like a rewards membership, they're just going to go to the cheapest station. It doesn't matter like how renewable or clean that oil was on its way there. They're going to go to the cheapest place. Or like no one's going to care that McDonald's gets 5% of their energy from the solar panels on the roof of the building. If you don't like the way McDonald's tastes, you're not going to eat McDonald's, right?
Yes.
Or if you're just not feeling like McDonald's that day, it doesn't matter. And if you do like McDonald's, you are going to eat there no matter what.
I will say there's a lot of big investors in, say, McDonald's that want McDonald's to use renewable energy.
You're seeing more of that, but it's still not a lot. And it's something that I wish people cared more about, because like you'll see people be like, oh, we're boycotting McDonald's now because of this, and it's like, yeah, and their sales weren't hurt a single like 0.1%, it wasn't, no one actually did it, but they like to talk about doing it. So it's something that I wish we saw actual more stake placed in by consumers, but consumers like to think about that sort of thing, but they don't like to act on it, which is really unfortunate.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely need the economic incentive. I mean. That's huge even in the solar industry. I had the fortune of looking into that a good bit a couple of years ago, and the only places where it flourishes are the ones where it's economically feasible. It's not the ones that care about it the most. It's the ones that have either incentivized it through taxes or have incentivized it through other sorts of subsidies, or just the economic conditions are right, so it's the most affordable, productive type of energy. So, you talked about a bit of your why you would want to become CEO of Exxon. I think there's two big questions that come to mind that I think it would be interesting to get your answer on. The first one is, as we talked about like GPA and hiring and all of that, if you were hiring people, right? So eventually moving up through the ranks, you'll have to evaluate resumes and candidates. What's the top thing you would look into a candidate that you would want to hire?
So I really like this because I really want to be on like the campus recruiting team for.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go work for Exxon. So for Exxon, I would love to be on the campus recruiting team, just because I think it's really cool to be in the position where you get to be like, like congratulations, we like you. Like I feel like it's great to be in that position where you get to give back and be like, yes, you are going to get a job. The flip side is you do have to tell no to a lot of people, but I think it's worth it though, because you get to tell yes to people too. Mm-hmm. Like it kind of ties in the other day. I was thinking when I flew back into the country, I was thinking how great it would be to be like a customs officer, like customs and border patrol officer for like a day. Yeah. Like not full time, but like for like a day, just to be like, to get to be the person that says welcome to the United States to people. I just think would be really, really cool. And for the same thing, like I think it'd be really cool to get to be a part of the process of like getting someone a full-time job, because it's a big momentous part of people's life, right? Getting their first job. So for me, I feel like when you're looking at a candidate, the tough part is always that it's better to know a candidate, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's better to like get to talk to them for a while and interact with them and see how they think and see how they feel and see how they tackle problems. And in a lot of cases, you're just having to judge off a resume for a lot of them, which is why I always tell younger students, especially other advice for freshmen, join the club in your major, right? For us, it's ASME. Join ASME and go to the meetings.
The American Society for Mechanical Engineers.
Right. Yeah. For chemies, it's AICE, the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. Petroleum has like 3 of them. Like they, if you're in a major, you know what club is specific to your major. Join that club, especially if they have companies come and present to the club. because you get to go, you get to interact with the people who will be at the career fairs, the people who will be judging your resume, right? You get to meet them ahead of time, interact with them, let them learn your name, ask them questions, get to show who you are to them. And then when they see your resume, they'll remember you, they'll set it aside because they know who you are, they know how you think. You've already done like half the interviewing, while being fed free food and a PowerPoint about a company, right? Like, it is such a useful networking opportunity that everyone should take advantage of. Everyone should join ASME, AIKE, ASCII for the civil engineers, IEEE for the electricals.
Well, and even if you're not engineering, whatever is a club within the domain that you're interested in getting involved with. Yes.
Right. For business, I guess it's joining a fraternity, like it's that version. It's the version of that for all the other majors, right?
Right.
Like, take the networking opportunities, because there's no substitute for networking when it comes to the best resume in the world is going to struggle to overcome a resume from someone that the interviewer, that the recruiter knows, right? Mm-hmm. So, get your foot in the door ahead of time, interact with the people, get to meet them, go to the networking reception the day before the career fairs, That's a tough environment, though, because there's a lot of people there. You're waiting in line. You're trying not to take up other people's time. Sometimes the recruiters might, they're trying to get through the line. They don't want to talk to you for 20 minutes. They might talk to you for 5, You go to, the club, you can really get better interaction with them, longer interactions, They come to these clubs once a year, once a semester. You'll get to see them a bunch before you ever give them your resume. They'll know who you are, Try to get in ahead of time on that. So then if I'm a recruiter, I think you're looking, if your company cares about the GPA, you have to look at the GPA, right? But to me, what I'm looking for typically, when I'm helping other people judge resumes, which I've done in the past, and I'm happy to do if anyone, if anyone's listening to this as a mechanical engineer and wants to send me their resume, I'm happy to look at it and give you my thoughts and comments on it. And my name, if you go to LSU and just type my name into the search bar, every LSU student's email address is already in your address book.
You're talking about the Outlook email.
Yeah, go to Outlook, just type Andrew Larpenter into the to field, and my name and email will pop up. That works for any LSU student.
Yep.
Anyone can email anyone else, and for some reason people don't know that's a feature. It's a very cool feature. But I'm typically looking for stuff like leadership and community involvement, right? Especially when you're looking at freshmen and sophomores. They're unlikely to have a lot of experience already in the engineering field. If they do, it's a great, if they worked at a machine shop over a summer, that's great experience. But most of them are going to have worked at a golf course, or I've waited tables for 3 years of high school, something like that. That's not really relevant to engineering, but does show, a work ethic. But what I'm always looking for is okay, did they compete in science fairs in high school? If you're looking at a freshman, they have high school stuff. Did they compete in science fairs? Anything extracurricular that showed an extra effort towards their interests? Were they in a sport maybe and was captain or co-captain or something that shows a history
stake of excellence in some domain. Yeah.
Not necessarily excellence so much as care,
right.
A little extra effort than what was the bare minimum requirement, You'll see people that are volunteers at their church, or who, do cleanup efforts after storms, stuff something that shows hey, this person cares about something, because a lot of times you get, as engineers, we kind of get, heads down and we focus on our schoolwork, and then it stresses us out a lot. And then outside of that, we don't want to even think about engineering. We don't want to do anything. We just want to watch TV or watch YouTube or something. That's how I was in high school. And you want to look for something that's okay, this person put forth a little effort towards something other than themselves. They cared about their degree. They cared about their community, something on the resume that points that out. I think it takes, it's not even worth saying, because it can take so many different forms, that could be, volunteering at a food bank, that could be volunteering at a church, that could be, sports captainship. There's a whole range of stuff it could be, but something that just shows extra,
Right. Well, and what it also shows is something that when I was involved in the Air Force ROTC program, there was a concept that they said probably at least once a month, which was have a bias toward action. And I always was a bit reprehensive immediately. I'm like, well, you want to be able to plan things. You don't just want to go in guns blazing, gung-ho into situations. You do want a degree of planning and such. But what I notice in a lot of, whether it's job things or things like that, exactly what you were talking about, where any additional area of involvement is an area that you not only thought about, but you took actionable steps to go do. It shows that bias toward action, where you're not just going to be thinking about doing something forever. You're actually going to be getting out there, making a change, helping with recovery efforts, playing the sport, making the thing. These things that everyone talks about, and it might be easy to just hypothesize, oh yeah, I'd be good at that. But actually going out, doing the work, and getting the experience acting, turning that kind of potential energy into actual kinetic energy, doing something, is something that you only get better at through practice, and it's something that would inevitably help any company, because you might see something that could be improved, and maybe 95% of people would see a thing that could be improved and went, oh, that should be improved. But 5% of people will go, that should be improved. Here's how it can be improved. I'm going to do a little bit of research into that. I'm going to write down a plan. I'm going to go tell my supervisor, hey, here's a thing that's wrong. Here's a possible solution. We should improve that. And that's how systems improve. That's how companies improve overall, is those people that do have a bias toward action. And that doesn't mean illogical action. That doesn't mean just, going off everywhere. But that does mean being able to overcome the inertia of complacency to be able to enact change in the world.
Something that baffles me is that it is very easy to attain leadership experience that will look good on your resume and provide you great experience dealing with companies and stuff. And it is taking leadership positions in all these clubs that I mentioned, right? ASME, your local major club. If you have the GPA for it and get into Tau Beta Pi has leadership positions, right? All these clubs have e-boards. And most of the time, they struggle to fill them. Mm-hmm. It's always like, who wants to do this? Like, they can't even hold an election. It's always people running unopposed, whoever, like, they're desperately trying to find people for these positions in most of these clubs, right? And, like, it's important that you join the club and you go to the meetings for networking reasons. That's just the bare minimum you can do in these clubs. But you can go on the e-board and you're put in a planning position. You get to plan events. You get to actually email and interact with the company reps, You get to hold bigger events that like put your name out there. And then on your resume, it goes as leadership experience. Like, it is invaluable for your resume, these positions, and they struggle to fill them in most clubs. And that to me is like another line between that action and inaction thing, where like the bare minimum is the bare minimum, I guess, is not doing anything, right?
Right.
But like the bare minimum action is like joining the club and going to the meetings. A step above that is going to the meetings and interacting with the recruiters. And then the step above that is going for leadership positions in these organizations because they need them.
Yeah.
And it looks great for you. Like, you have to just commit some of your time every week on like, your responsibilities to that club, but it's a very attainable goal to do that. And it's something that looks great on your resume and provides great experience to talk about to recruiters and in interviews. But that sort of bias towards action that you're talking about to me is very interesting, because I was not that way in high school at all. I was a very lazy kid in high school. And part of that was I lived like kind of in the middle of nowhere. Everything involved was like a 30-minute drive. And I was just like, it was always easier just to stay home and do nothing. Right.
Right.
And it was kind of interesting to me freshman year in LaVille before the pandemic. There was like a board with sticky notes where everyone's putting like their resolutions for the school year. And a lot of people's resolutions were like to say no more, right? To say, commit themselves less so that they can do a better job at things. And mine was the exact opposite. Like my sticky note, I literally wrote say yes to everything on it. Because I got very good at saying no in high school to everything. And I was like, I'm here. I'm in a place that's exciting with tons of opportunity. Like there's an event happening every night in the res hall or on campus. Mm-hmm. Go to everything, see everything, experience everything, and you'll find cool opportunities along the way.
Definitely.
And to me, like obviously there's a limit. You don't want to say yes to everything, but you don't want to say no to everything either. But for me, I was already in a no position and had to transition to a yes position. And it's interesting to see a lot of people coming out of high school that are the opposite, and they have to like try to commit themselves less. But I feel like there's two sayings here that mean the exact opposite thing, but they both accomplish the same goal to me, which is like anything worth doing is worth doing right, is probably what you've heard before, right? And it's very true, and it's very good. And if you need to hear that, then you should absolutely hear that. You should put that on a sticky note, put it on your mirror, put it on a reminder to come up on your phone every day. Like if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Mm-hmm. But the exact opposite is also true, where if something's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly too. Like it's better if something's important and worth doing, it's better to try it than to just not do it, right? Like if it's worth doing it poorly at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's Michael Jordan's famous thing, is that the reason that he succeeded is because he failed more than anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking about CEOs and leadership and like the difficulty in that, and I mean, Steve Jobs got fired from Apple as CEO. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. People who know the story, like they put a lot of stock in that, but I don't know if many lay people are aware of the fact that Steve Jobs back in like 80s or 90s got fired from Apple as CEO. And then eventually he came back and was like the richest man, one of the richest people from all the money he got from them buying the company he formed in his absence from Apple, right? But I mean, that to me is a big professional failure, right? To be CEO of the company that you started and getting fired from it. And like, did he go and sulk and dwell and, take his money and leave? Or
maybe for a week.
Or did he say, screw you guys, I'm gonna show y'all what y'all are missing out on. I'm gonna go start a competing company that you have to buy for like, hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm gonna come back as CEO triumphantly, and then I'm gonna release the iPhone. Right? Like Apple after the iPhone and Apple before the iPhone are two very different companies societally, right? And I mean, Steve Jobs came back and did a lot of that on the back end. So he recovered from that failure and he learned from it, and he also used it as motivation, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've had a lot of failures too over my collegiate career that motivate me, but it's important to at least try, right? Because if you don't try, you don't fail.
I think that's a phenomenal saying that I haven't heard someone use before. Is anything worth doing is worth doing poorly.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting way of
I didn't come up with it. Yeah. I heard it.
Yeah. No, but it's really interesting. Is you're striving to do it right, but if you don't, you still strove.
Yeah.
You still probably grew from having done it, and you never know what other opportunities could spring from that. I mean, I know personally one of a really big story of kind of failing at the thing that you're trying to do, but opening just a ton more doors is in high school. I was competing in this oratorical contest with the American Legion, and I got to the state level of competition. It's like, okay, there's these other people from all around the state, and if you do well, you can go to nationals, and now there's some real prize money, right? Midway through the speech, mind completely blanks. I basically just stand on stage for like for like a minute, just going like.
Felt like an hour probably.
Yeah, it felt like an hour. But I'm basically just like looking at him going like, yeah. And my mind completely blanked, right? And so I obviously did not win that competition. Their notes were all like, oh, great topic. You can't just blank for a minute on stage, right? But so after that, I went to a meeting with the American Legion that they had me discussing something. And I mentioned that I got to meet other Eagle Scouts through the competition. And one of them says, oh, well, you should apply for our Eagle Scout of the Year thing. I thought, oh, I should do that, which I never would have known about if I hadn't gone through this whole oratorical context. And, next thing I know, I was able to get, Eagle Scout of the state of Louisiana, and that opened all these other doors, And you never know when you have that bias toward action, even if you don't accomplish the goal, what in the process of accomplishing the goal you might open opportunities for. And it kind of goes back to Sun Tzu's Art of War. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. And so if you have that bias toward action of seizing the opportunities, I mean, who knows what's going to open for you.
Yeah, to me I like the saying a lot because it's the exact opposite of another saying.
Yeah.
And you need both. So like if you're someone who's biased towards not doing anything, then anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, right? But if you're someone who just perpetually turns in incomplete stuff that's not your best effort, anything worth doing is worth doing well. Like if it was worth putting some effort towards, it's worth putting more effort towards, which is the emotion. It's the emotion evoked by both phrases, right?
Right.
If it's worth putting effort towards, put more effort, right? So like if it's worth doing at least poorly, and if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Like. The one you need them in different moments of your life, facing different situations depending on who you are, but you do need both, which is what I like about it. But
it's very insightful. Yeah.
For me, one of my biggest professional failures, the Honors College has a program called LaSalle. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, the Louisiana Scholar something.
Louisiana Leadership and Scholar Program or something like that.
Yes. Don't you take extra classes about Louisiana problems like coastal erosion and
coastal
stuff?
erosion, poverty, stuff like that? Yeah. And then towards the end, there's a big project where you try to apply your major towards tackling different problems in Louisiana, right? So to me, it sounds amazing, right?
Right.
Like what a cool thing. Like that's right up my... So, I mean,
yeah,
I might be biased. I don't think I am. But I think Louisiana is the best state in the country. It's so unique. Had so much history. And I love Louisiana. My heart pours out for Louisiana. And it's why I love Drew Brees so much for what he did for the state. And to me, that program sounds so cool. Like I would have loved to have done that. So I applied and then I interviewed and I did not get it.
Oh, wow.
I was denied for that program. And
we're going to make sure that the person that runs that program sees this.
No. It was the right choice.
Yeah.
It was around the same time where I was trying to say yes to everything, starting to say yes to everything. And to me, it was just like this moment of reckoning of you are deficient, right? Like I am not doing something enough. Mm-hmm. And I took that as motivation to be I'm going to do everything for the next 4 years. I'm going to pour myself. If I my plan was I was going to focus all my extra collegiate time into LaSalle because, you have
Right.
spare time in college. We have less than other majors maybe, but
Allegedly.
But like my idea was like, this will be my thing that I do in college. I can look back and be like, I did LaSalle. It'll be what I talk about in interviews. Like all my extra effort will go into LaSalle basically. Cause I'm not getting a minor. I'm not doing any of that other stuff. I'm going to try to get college honors, and I'm still on track for college honors, but it was like all my extra effort will go towards LaSalle, will be my thing. And then I got denied for it. So then I was like, okay, I'll take all that effort that I was going to pour into LaSalle, and I will pour it into engineering organizations and K through 12 outreach. Like I'll take all that energy and put it towards another good use, since I couldn't put it towards this good use.
Right.
So for me, it was really this moment of reckoning of like, I am not enough in some way, and I never want to be not enough again.
Yeah.
So like I use it as motivation still to this day. Like it's something where I'm like, hopefully if I was rejudged now, I hope that I would be judged sufficient and not deficient. But it's important to take those moments of like, of feeling like you're not enough for something, and trying to find a way to get something out of it. And for me, it was seizing every other opportunity I came across, right? I'm not going to turn something cool down.
Yeah. Well, and now arguably among everyone in LaSalle, working for Exxon and the path that you really want to go in, you might be able to have more of an influence on aspects of Louisiana's economy and production and overall standard of living than probably many of the people that were in the LaSalle project.
I don't think I would say that. There's a lot of very, very cool, capable, incredibly smart people in the Honors College, and a lot of cool different majors than me, in a way that like someone going to law school is going to be able to maybe someday become a judge and influence a lot of stuff in very cool ways. People that are going to the medical field have a lot of cool stuff they can contribute.
More different, not better.
Well, I mean, to me, probably better. Like it's cooler stuff to me. A lot like the environmental engineers have a lot that they can contribute to it, especially like the wetland erosion prevention and stuff, and regeneration, which is very cool in a way that I can't do it. So I wouldn't say that there's like any way that I could do more than anyone else. I feel like everyone has something they can contribute.
Definitely. And that's it kind of plays into the second question I had on the Exxon topic, which is, if we made you CEO right now, not only what would your hiring practices be, but what would be the biggest initiative, knowing what you know right now? Obviously, in 10 years, 20 years' time, it's probably going to change. But knowing what you know right now about both the company and the state of affairs in Louisiana and in the world, what would be your biggest initiative that you would want to orient the company around?
I don't think I can answer this question because I don't know anything about.
That's fair.
Like the position I'm in, I'm just like a senior in college, right? I think it'd be kind of not boisterous. It's not the word I'm looking for, but I don't know. I feel like to answer that question properly, I would have to like assume more about my abilities than I possess, right?
That's fair.
I feel like I would be speaking beyond my means.
Knowing what you don't know is a crucial indication of wisdom.
I mean, Socrates would say that, but I don't know. I don't think it would apply to me. There's a lot where I'm kind of like way too egotistical about. I feel like the companies really they say they're pushing for this like carbon dioxide tax credit around like $100 a ton. And we're seeing it creep up to like 75. I feel like there could be some more push for that from like the lobbying side of things. But I don't know what they're doing. They might be doing all that they can right now. It's like I can't really, like there's not much I can say without knowing more about the company's inner workings that I just don't have access to right now.
What form of renewable energy do you think has the best potential long term?
So I'm not a renewable energy engineer.
Okay.
But I really have to preface before I start talking.
All good.
I feel like nuclear is always underlooked, especially in this country, in a way that it isn't in some of the other countries in the world. Because after 3 Mile Island, we kind of stopped issuing new permits for nuclear power plants for the most part. So all our technology is really old. Nuclear's problem is that it's really expensive up front, and all our old technology is really expensive to maintain, right? Mm-hmm. And if we built these new, smaller, more efficient nuclear reactors, they'd still cost a lot up front, but they're a lot more efficient long term. They produce less waste, and they're just better in every way than what we currently use. And we're scared to issue permits for that sort of thing, and we're scared to, also because it's so expensive, we're scared to invest in that sort of thing. It always has to be kind of like heavily subsidized. But it'll be interesting to see stuff like, have you heard of pink hydrogen?
I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
I learned very recently that they added more colors of hydrogen than just blue and green. So pink is when you use nuclear energy to generate the heat and electricity required for electrolysis for hydrogen production. And hydrogen's cool because hydrogen can really be mixed in with natural gas and kind of phase out natural gas slowly. And hydrogen, if we had the infrastructure for it, would be very cool for cars and stuff too. But the production's always energy intensive. So if we see pink hydrogen, that's a very interesting source. Solar and wind they're great. They take up a lot of space and they're very kind of intermittent. They're good crutch powers, but for like this base load that you need for an electrical grid, like those smaller things, they're better for like they handle peaker loads good. They're not always variable, but you can use batteries to sort of level stuff out. But nuclear is really great at base load. And it's interesting to see nuclear kind of being phased out all around the globe when it's great for advancement. It'd be interesting to see fusion kind of take that role. It'd be nice. I think we've been 10 years away from fusion for the last 60 years. So, maybe 40 more years and we'll only be 10 years away finally. But it's, I don't know how far out it is. And we need solutions right now. And that's why I feel like natural gas is really good right now because it's better than coal. And a lot of this country still runs on coal. Louisiana is very good about using natural gas. A lot of places like in Pennsylvania and stuff like that, they love coal for their power plants. I don't get it.
Well, and even
I would like to see them.
I mean, you look at Germany closed a whole bunch of their nuclear plants.
Had to reopen coal plants.
Yeah, reopened all the coal plants.
I would love to see natural gas used in that place. Natural gas isn't perfect, but it's better than coal. It's a good intermediary power source, as we build up all these renewables like solar and wind and hopefully open, more nuclear. And with a lot of natural gas design, especially newer ones, you can mix in like a certain percentage of hydrogen and burn it at the same time. You get interesting and sometimes detrimental environmental effects on that sort of thing on the exhaust. I think the more hydrogen put into natural gas, the more that your reaction generates NOx. But eventually you could move to like pure hydrogen, I think, for a lot of stuff. And the problem with that is always containment. Hydrogen's very, very small, right? Hydrogen likes to leak out through like solid walls if you give it enough time and for a lot of stuff. But it's a very interesting energy landscape that we're in, and that's why it's so exciting. Because there's a lot of innovation to be done on all these things, and like who knows what's going to win? Who knows who's going to take charge of it? Like it's just exciting that this whole industry,
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's also good. Whenever I'm thinking about it, I think I agree on the mentality of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right? As we're striving to advance these different technologies, we shouldn't just throw out the better opportunities we have and go back to the base, like you were saying, coal. Like, well, yeah, natural gas is a cleaner form than coal. So let's do that. Is it perfect? No. But we don't have the perfect solutions yet. So let's go with the best that we have, and then as we develop the perfect solutions, we'll phase them in.
And even then, like a lot of the bigger stuff, like a whole field of solar panels is expensive to build. Takes a while to get the land and permit for. Like you can put a natural gas plant together. They've got mobile natural gas generators, right? Like you can throw stuff together, stopgap, pretty good, especially in terms of natural gas, in a way that I would love to see to kind of cut this country off of coal completely, For some reason, there's a lot of resistance to that in a lot of places.
Clean coal.
They take the coal and they clean it first and then they put it in and burn it. But yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I know Andrew's involved in a lot, has a lot of interesting things going on. So is there anything that you just want to put out there for people to know about what you're doing?
If you're a student at LSU, you can join Maker Club on TigerLink and come learn some hands-on skills. And if you know any cool hands-on skills and would like to teach other people, we offer that too. I want to help people grow in their ability to learn and teach. And you can just search that up on TigerLink and join. One of my best friends, Jacob Williams, and I have a podcast together called the 2 Plus Podcast, which you can find on Spotify and Apple Music and basically anywhere podcasts are. So if you like hearing me sort of ramble about random topics and news stories and stuff like that, basically very, very similar to what I did here today, I do have a podcast that is mostly that, with a lot more joking mood, me and my friend that was my roommate freshman year. And then also, if you're in the College of Engineering, I highly recommend joining clubs like SPM or Engineering Diversity Ambassadors.
SPM as Society of Peer Mentors?
Society of Peer Mentors, that's right. Just any club where you can go out and do K-12 STEM outreach in your local community. To me, that is one of the most important and valuable things you can do as a person, is to try to go out and show kids that, like, hey, engineering, science, math, it is cool. It is fun. You can do cool things. And, especially kids, they're still curious. School hasn't sort of beat the curiosity out of them yet. And you get to go and and show them how amazing this field that we're all in can be. So if you're in engineering, or even if you're not and you're interested in that sort of thing, I highly recommend finding places where you can volunteer for K-12 engineering outreach.
Absolutely. I've kind of long said in conversations that I think the two things that have most improved the quality of life for people around the globe are stable political structures and advancements in science and technology. And so inspiring that interest and especially inspiring an interest in science and technology that, like you said, will sustain the kind of beating that sometimes the educational system has on people's interests, is crucial not only to the individual's prosperity, but to the prosperity of our entire civilization. So, I mean, that's a phenomenal point, and that's a phenomenal thing to be working on, to be working on that, teaching that, and inspiring that in the next generation. So thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for being by. Thank you for being a friend, and I look forward to not only what you'll do, but to everything that you're helping other people achieve. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
That concludes our podcast for today. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We can be found on Instagram at @campus_connections. We can soon be found on Twitter, similarly, not quite yet, but soon. You can follow KLSU on all social media platforms. You can follow friend KLSU on Snapchat to send messages live during the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. I think we learned a lot during this. This was a great discussion. I hope everyone listening has a great week, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers.